You're on your knees in dry orange dirt somewhere in northern Tanzania, and you've been digging with a sharpened stick for almost 10 minutes straight. Your fingernails are packed with soil, your shoulders ache, and you still don't have breakfast yet. Finally, the stick catches something, and you pry loose a tuber the size of your forearm. Tough, fibrous, nothing like food that comes out of a box. You'll chew this for a while before it's soft enough to swallow. Meanwhile, somewhere back home, someone is pouring cereal into a bowl in under 10 seconds. Same species, same brain size, completely different relationship with food. So here's the question worth sitting with. How did a brain this hungry, one of the most energy-demanding organs on the planet, survive for hundreds of thousands of years on food this hard to get? And why does almost nothing on your plate today look anything like what it took to feed that brain back then? Let's follow the thread, because it starts with a number that sounds almost too clean to be true. Right now, 3 out of every 4 calories eaten on Earth come from just 12 plants. 12. Meanwhile, a single Hadza forager in Tanzania, someone alive today, not a historical reenactment, might eat over 100 different wild foods across 1 year. Roots, greens, berries, tubers, honey, meat, all of it rotating with the seasons. Think about that gap for a second. 100 foods versus 12. That's not a difference in taste. That's a difference in what the body was built to expect walking into every single meal. Now picture a different moment, same world, different sound. A bird calling from the trees, chattering and darting from branch to branch like it's trying to get your attention. It is. This is a greater honey guide, and it's about to lead a group of Hadza men directly to a wild beehive it already scouted out. Because the bird can't crack open a hive on its own, but humans with smoke and tools can, and afterward it gets to eat the wax. It's a working partnership between a bird and a human that still happens today, and it means that on a good day, honey wasn't a luxury. It was a jackpot delivered by an animal that had learned to read us as well as we'd learned to read it. That's the good days. But here's where things get interesting, because those good days were never guaranteed, and the body had to be built for both. Now fast forward completely. You're standing in a kitchen at 7:18 in the morning. Toast pops, cereal pours. A banana gets sliced into yogurt that's already sweetened 5 different ways, none of which you'd notice just reading the front of the label. Nothing here required digging, walking, or waiting on a bird. Here's the surprising part, and it's the kind of fact that stops people mid-bite. Cornflakes, plain, ordinary cornflakes, score higher on the glycemic index than a spoonful of table sugar. That means they raise your blood sugar faster than sugar itself does. The average person eating a modern diet takes in around 17 teaspoons of added sugar a day, most of it hidden under a dozen different ingredient names, which raises an obvious question. If that food doesn't even taste that sweet, why is it hitting your bloodstream like it does? Researchers eventually found the answer wasn't really about the sugar at all. It was about timing. And that discovery came from watching people's phones. In 2015, a scientist named Satchidananda Panda at the Salk Institute had volunteers log every single bite and sip they took using an app. What he found surprised even his own team. Most people were eating, in some form, for 14 to 16 hours a day straight. First bite around 8 a.m., last bite closing in on 11 at night. Almost no real breaks, which means, for most of the day, the body was sitting in a single, unbroken state. Fed, fed, fed. At first, this doesn't sound like a problem. More food should just mean more energy, right? But that's not how the body reads it. Evolution didn't build us to track abundance. It built us to track change, the switch between fed and fasted. Because that switch is the actual signal that tells the body when to store fuel and when to release it. Take away the switch, and the body just doesn't know which mode it's supposed to be in. Everything up to this point was really just the setup. Because the story of what modern food does to us goes a lot deeper than sugar and timing, and the next discovery came out of a hospital, not a kitchen. In 2019, a researcher named Kevin Hall ran a controlled experiment at the National Institutes of Health. He put people on 2 diets, back to back. One built from ultra-processed food, one built from minimally processed food. Both matched exactly for calories, sugar, fat, and fiber. On paper, they should have eaten the same amount either way. They didn't. On the ultra-processed diet, people ate roughly 500 more calories a day without anyone telling them to, and without realizing it themselves. Why? Because the processed food went down faster and softer, and the body's fullness signal, the one that normally says, "That's enough," never got triggered in time. And that wasn't an accident. Back in the 1980s, a food scientist named Howard Moskowitz spent years testing sugar-salt-fat ratios to find what he called the bliss point, the exact combination that keeps you craving more without ever fully satisfying you. Modern snack food isn't just tasty by luck. Some of it was engineered, on purpose, to outsmart the same reward system that once rewarded your ancestors for finding a beehive. You're not weak, you're just eating against a system that was never designed to say no to it. Now here's a discovery that has nothing to do with sugar at all. It's written into bone. In the 1930s, a dentist named Weston Price traveled to remote communities that hadn't yet adopted Western flour and sugar, and he started photographing something he wasn't expecting. Wide, straight dental arches, almost like the rule rather than the exception. Compare that to skulls from farming societies, or to a modern orthodontist's waiting room where crowded teeth are so common, they barely register as unusual anymore. What changed? Chewing, digging up and gnawing through fibrous roots for hours a day, sends a mechanical growth signal to a developing jaw. Soft bread and mashed, canned food don't. When the Industrial Revolution arrived, daily chewing time dropped from hours to minutes, and the human face itself started changing shape within a generation. So picture the opposite scenario now. Not a good day with honey, but a bad one. The rains haven't come, the tubers are gone, the hunt failed 3 days running. What happens to a body built for exactly this kind of stretch? It switches fuel sources. Fat stored around the hips and under the skin gets broken down into molecules called ketones, small enough to cross straight into the brain and keep it running without a single carbohydrate involved. Bone marrow gets cracked open, meat gets smoked and dried into something dense enough to carry for weeks, the ancestor of what later cultures called pemmican. None of this was a diet. It was a rhythm, dictated entirely by scarcity, with feast on one side and fast on the other. And in an odd twist, that same rhythm is what researchers in Alabama recently tried recreating on purpose, shifting people's meals into an earlier, shorter window done by early afternoon. The surprising part, insulin sensitivity improved even in people who didn't lose a single pound. Timing alone did something calories couldn't explain. Which brings us to the banana in your yogurt, because even that isn't what it looks like. The Cavendish banana, the only one most people have ever eaten, didn't become the world's banana until the 1950s, after a fungus wiped out the previous dominant variety almost entirely. It was bred to survive shipping, not to resemble anything your ancestors would have foraged. Wheat went through its own quiet transformation in the 1960s, when short, high-yield varieties replaced older strains during what's now called the Green Revolution. The fruits and grains on your plate look ancient. Almost none of them actually are. So here's the real twist in all of this. There was never one single caveman diet to copy, because what people ate shifted constantly with the region, the season, and whatever showed up that week. What stayed consistent across deserts, forests, coastlines, everywhere researchers have looked, wasn't a food list at all. It was rhythm, hours of chewing, long stretches of nothing, a sharp physical line between feast and fast that the body could actually feel. And that's the part that lingers after the video ends, long after the facts about bananas and cornflakes fade. Your body isn't actually asking you what to eat. It's still listening for a rhythm it hasn't heard clearly in generations. And every hour you spend snacking without a real break might just be the sound of that question going unanswered.